So, in this session, we're going to cover nutrition, and nutrition is so important. Many of us come in from alcohol use disorder, and not even realizing it, we have a lot of nutritional deficiencies. Our blood sugar is out of whack. That's very normal. I was a health coach even when I was actively drinking, and I'm known for all of my plant-based recipes. And if you're ever around me, you'll see that I have, I'm always eating whole foods and plant-based. And I honestly think that that was part of the reason why I probably was able to function as well as I did for so long because it compensated. But ultimately, diet was not enough to compensate. And then, I kind of hit a rapid decline in terms of my mental health and my physical health. I didn't feel like I was sick, but slowly I didn't have the energy to work out like I did. I was, crawling through my exercise every day, and it was getting harder and harder to show up. So food plays a really important role in recovery. And I want to preface what I'm about to say with, if nutrition isn't your thing, then you should know, as you probably already do, that people do recover without paying attention to nutrition. If you went to an AA meeting or checked into some rehab or something like that, very little, if any, attention would be paid to nutrition. In fact, if you go to an AA meeting, there's likely going to be donuts and coffee. And, I discussed in one of the earlier videos how sugar and caffeine and nicotine and other substances that you ingest, artificially ingest, they do temporarily boost your dopamine, but what goes up must come down. So there's always a withdrawal effect of the benefits. You drink a cup of coffee, you feel better, you feel more energy, you feel focused, but then there's a price to pay for that. And in addition to that, because you're artificially stimulating or externally stimulating your dopamine, your brain can continue to be lazy and not produce it on its own. So if you are struggling in recovery and you want to maximize the way you feel and accelerate your return to normal, eliminating substances like sugar and caffeine in the short term are really a good idea. Again, people do recover all the time without this component. So if it's not your thing, next, don't worry about it. I really think in life, the pain of the problem has to be greater than the actual problem before we do something about it. The pain of alcohol use disorder has to be greater than the solution to alcohol use disorder, which is to quit drinking. And the same thing, I know for me, because I'm so aware of nutrition, I was much more tuned in to how nutrition could help me. In fact, I'll share that I have been an intermittent faster for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And I have found that to be kind of the missing link to all my plant-based eating and everything else. The way it looks for me is I don't worry about the time, but when I intermittent fast, I just don't really eat breakfast. I get up and, either have a cup of coffee, which I occasionally do drink and sometimes I don't. Right now I'm not. I switched to tea because I'm having some bladder issues and caffeine was irritating it. But I basically don't eat lunch before noon or 1. And I found in early recovery, luckily I was listening to my body, that was not working for me. And so I stopped intermittent fasting and I didn't pick it up again for probably, I don't know, 6 or 9 months. It just one day felt good to do. And I was like, all right, let's try that again. And now I'm back to intermittent fasting, unless I have plans for breakfast to meet somebody or something, I don't worry about it. But so I really encourage you to look at your own definition of what works for you and just throw everything out. The other thing I'll say is I am plant-based and I'm pretty strict about it. I turned vegan when I think 2009 or 2010, and I've really stuck with that diet. Well, since I went through early recovery and learned so much about the brain chemistry and what supports brain chemistry, I honestly don't recommend that. So if you are a plant-based person, you can do it. I did it. If you're not, now's not the time. And if you want to be, now's not the time. The amino acids that our brain needs to, recalibrate dopamine, recalibrate serotonin, heal from all of the stress overload, the adrenal fatigue with the cortisol levels and the stress hormones. Those are produced by amino acids that are highly present in animal foods and are not present in, in nearly the same amount, therapeutic amounts, as they are in plants. So, with that being said, one of the handouts below this video is whole food recipes. And these are my favorite and best recipes that I've taught multiple classes with plant-based eating on. So they're tried and tested multiple times. Most of them are pretty easy in terms of, preparation. They're a lot easier than they look. And I encourage you to look through these for a couple of reasons. Not because you're going plant-based right now, but because the desserts that you're going to find in there have no sugar. Whenever I make desserts, they're all, the sweet part is medjool dates. Um, and so there's a lot of fiber, there's a lot of nutrients without the added sugar, and they're delicious and they're easy to make. You can make a batch of cookies or a batch of brownies in, less than 30 minutes if you have a sweet tooth. There's also some energy balls in there. So I encourage you to look through the recipes for sweet things if you're looking to satisfy that craving without, the donuts. And then also the breakfast options in there. I have an avocado toast that also has beans, white beans mixed in so you don't even know they're there. I have a smoothie recipe, and smoothies are a great way to hit all the nutritional checkbox without having a lot of prep time. You can even make multiple days at one time. And so the smoothie recipe that I include is very versatile. I list all sorts of options, but basically you're putting in some sort of milk, and then berries and greens, and then flax seeds, which are really high in omega and fiber, and then various anti-inflammatory herbs and spices like ginger or turmeric or cinnamon. You don't have to use all those, and the recipe explains how to keep it real simple. But as I said, with me giving up intermittent fasting, what I found intuitively before I had read the research and understood the biology was that eating 3 meals a day was very necessary because when you come in from alcohol use disorder, 95% of people, the study I've read says 95% of alcoholics checking into a rehab. So I don't know what the actual percentage is for, early exiters and healthy people that are like, check, please, I'm done. But I feel like I was probably close, if not over the threshold for hypoglycemia, meaning that my blood sugar was really, really low because alcohol keeps your blood sugar low. It triggers an insulin release. So even with healthy diets and no sugar being added to your food, you can still develop that pre-diabetes risk factors. And it takes time, not a long time, but it does take time for the blood sugar to restabilize. And so you're not only dealing with brain chemistry, dopamine and serotonin, and the adrenals of cortisol, but you're also dealing with blood sugar issues. So my recommendation, which is above this video, is that you eat 3 square meals a day, including breakfast, and make sure you have protein in every meal. So if you are plant-based, then what that might look like is a protein powder, a vegan protein powder. And whether it's vegan or not, adding protein powder to your smoothie or something like that really just gives your brain and blood sugar that extra support that's necessary. And food is medicine, but it's not a drug. So one salad, one smoothie isn't going to make you feel like you've got a whole new reality. But when you eat three square meals a day, within a week, you're feeling a lot better. And honestly, you do feel better in one day. But in terms of seeing changes in your health, it's just the habit over time. So keep your expectations low. Once again, food's not a drug, but it is your best medicine. So in the basic suggestions above, I list in order of appearance. So the first and most important thing for you to do is to drink 64 ounces of water a day, because many of us come in from alcohol use disorder also severely hydrated. For me, I had hair issues for years. It was always breaking off. It would grow about this much, and then I had all these split ends. And I went through tons of supplements and heartache. With women, at least, our hair is kind of a thing. And I could not figure out. I fired my hairdresser multiple times because she's over processing the highlights or whatever. And when I quit drinking, 6 months later, my hair is growing like a weed and shiny. And evidently, I was massively dehydrated. So, the other thing with water is that it keeps you energized. So, when I was training to be a health coach in my very first round of coaching education, we had to do experiments for any diet or any habit that we recommended. And so I did, except I really didn't give up alcohol. That's a true story. But I started the water experiment, and it was an experiment designed to help people who are trying to get off coffee realize that water is far more energizing than coffee. Coffee kind of gives you that wiry feeling, and I love coffee, do not get me wrong. But I did the experiment and I started drinking 64 ounces of water a day. I got up, I slammed one, and then multiple times throughout the day, I just carried around a big jug. Again, in the nighttime, there might have been a little vodka in that, but we're not judging here. So, what I found was it was absolutely true. The more water I drank, the better I felt. My skin was glowing, my energy levels were high. So in the afternoon, per this experiment, I discovered that if I was tired and sluggish, slamming a glass of water was far better than making the choice to drink caffeine in the afternoon, which then ultimately might keep me up or whatever. So just be open to these sorts of little things that, no, they won't change your life, but damn, it all adds up. You know what I'm saying? So the first thing I suggest is your hydration. Focus on that. If you focus on nothing else, you're doing well. Second is to minimize your caffeine, sugar, and processed food. Processed food just makes you feel like crap. And every little bit counts. Again, think of things on a spectrum of 1 to 10. And if you're already feeling bad at a 5, that processed food, and I'm talking fast food, I'm talking chips, I'm talking fried food, all of that, it might actually push you up to a 6. It's not going to kill you that day. Instead, a healthy meal might take you down to a 4. So you were at a 5, and instead of going to a 6, you went to a 4. And when you're at a 4, your bandwidth just improves and you're able to make even more good decision that ultimately might push you down a little bit lower in terms of how you feel on a scale of 1 to 10. So really important to minimize bad food. Sugar would be the second priority over processed food. And then caffeine would be something to consider if you are dealing with cravings, and if you are dealing with, mood and energy levels and all that. Taking caffeine out will actually improve your energy levels. And nothing wrong with, scoping down or whatever you say there. No need to go into a caffeine withdrawal as well. Just cut, if you're normally drinking 3 or 4 cups of coffee, cut it to 2, cut it to 1. substitute with decaf, or, when I've done this, I switch to half decaf, half regular. Be smart, be kind to yourself, but try to move yourself in the right direction. And then the third thing above us, as I've said, is to eat 3 meals a day, and that will keep your brain chemistry and blood sugar stable. Um, Include plenty of protein. Plant-based proteins are your tofus and your tempeh. Beans have a lot of protein. But obviously, I don't go into a lot of meat proteins because you already know how to cook chicken or fish or whatever. So my whole food plant-based recipe thing down there, it doesn't have any meats. And don't mistake that as a suggestion that you should give up meats right now, because you really shouldn't. Meat and dairy, the research shows that the amino acids are much more readily available. But you can use those recipes to substitute. I have a fabulous recipe for artichoke spinach dip in spaghetti squash, and it's amazing. And so you can make that and put some chicken with it or whatever. So just make sure that you're getting good protein and good fats. Now is not the time, even if you have weight to lose. You're going to lose more weight if you're keeping your blood sugar stable and not having cravings that ultimately defeat the purpose of healthy eating throughout the day. And if you keep your body nourished, then your metabolism will function on its maximum potential wherever you're at. So don't think that starving yourself is ever going to lead to good results. Denying yourself the care that you need is not the way to get where you want to go. And that's a belief that is often very, very ingrained. I have a lot of clients, just as many clients come in with that they've gained weight because they've been drinking. But a lot of us, and I would include myself in this category, had the drinkorexia, where we'd rather drink our calories than eat. And so there might be some psychological issues, and I'm happy to work with you one-on-one or bring those to the group calls, because you're not the only one. Most people are on one side of the fence or other. They're either eating too much and coping with their emotions or whatever with bad food, or they're starving themselves. And the road to health requires balance. So if you can let go, and if you can't, that's when you got to seek additional support. But if you can let go of, okay, this early recovery, I'm going to accomplish everything I've ever wanted to in the first month, just let go of that. Your number one priority right now is to not drink, and then everything else will just come in its own time. So be kind to yourself first and foremost. Have compassion. I will say before I go on that if you are not a cooker and you don't have the bandwidth to figure that out, I do have a link above that lists meal delivery services. Trust me when I say that eating good meals is a priority. You have to make it a priority. So now might be the time to do the Blue Apron thing, or the Spindly. There's I think 21 in that, in the link above. So just treat it like a need. When we were drinking, how often would we make compromises in our budget because fuck it, whatever. Now is the time where you have to pay attention to your needs. And if you don't have the bandwidth, or you're overwhelmed already at work and you're like, I can't take time off work right now to kind of heal, well, then manage to get yourself a food delivery service or other support, or ask for help, or work with a friend to share meals. And I have a lot of other suggestions in the Make a Plan, Eat the Plan. So the Make a Plan, Eat the Plan is for you to develop a food plan that works. Now, if you are going to just do meal delivery services, you don't need to do this yet, but it doesn't hurt to look at it. And if you don't have the funds to hire Oprah's chef for yourself, then you're going to want to look at what you're doing and how to make your own life easier when it comes to meal prep. So the exercise, first I go into your current habits, and I try to break everything down. Do you make a grocery list? When and how often do you shop? What do you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And you can print that form out or you can answer it. I encourage you not to just answer it in your head, though. This exercise, as it evolves into the exercise, it's you have to write out your thoughts to really make sense of them. You know, these fleeting thoughts in our head are often just emotion based. And it's only when we write them down, hand or by hand or on a file on your computer, whatever, it really helps you come to understand what exactly it is that you think. It's a very helpful process. So I ask you, you know, what tips or strategies have you used or do you use, even if you don't use them all the time, you know, what works for you? You know, you have, I might say my best week is when I go to the grocery on the weekend and I have a list of all the meals I'm making for the week. That makes all the difference in the world because the worst question in the world is what's for dinner? Like I can cook anything. It's that decision making process that amps up my stress. I don't know what's for dinner. Like I don't know. But if I have a list and I take the time to work through that frustration on the weekend and make sure I've got the supplies, then it's all fine. Like I can chop and cook, it's no big deal. So I ask you to go through what you're currently doing and to look back on your life as far as if you have ever been successful. You know, maybe you've been on a diet or maybe you had really good habits and all your cylinders were firing. What was different about your life? And I want you to pull out the factors. You know, it may not have anything to do with food. Well, I was in a new relationship and we loved to eat. Okay. You know, so identifying the factors that did motivate you is really important. And then I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, given all of this information and just kind of beginning the process, how motivated are you to eat 3 meals every day, 3 healthy meals? And when you say, let's say I'm a 7, I'm a 7. Okay, well, instead of me asking you, well, why aren't you a 10, which we'll get into the obstacles, but what I want you to do is explain why you're a 7 or why you're a 4 or maybe you're a 2. Well, why are you a 2? What is motivating you? Because remember, ambivalence is not a lack of motivation. It's just conflicting motivations. So you might be motivated to eat healthy because you think it'll make you lose weight. Well, that counts. And then we can expand on that. You might be motivated to eat healthy because you think that it'll make you feel better. Okay, well, let's expand on that. So then the exercise takes you into telling your story. So I ask you to brainstorm all of the very legit and fully bullshit excuses that you tell yourself. And again, it's very important to write these down one way or another, type or handwrite. What are the reasons you tell yourself that you can't make dinner on any given night, or why you're not eating breakfast, or why you're not planning for your lunches? I do want you to consider all 3 meals, and I tell you to do that. But write it all down, no matter how real they are or how much you know, like, yeah, that's just an excuse. Write it all down, get it out of your head, get it onto a piece of paper. And then I ask you to examine that story. So after you have it all, I want you to pull out the underlying beliefs that are driving your behavior, such as I can't cook, or you know, my kids have evening activities, I'm never home, or healthy food is too expensive. Whatever it is that ultimately is the core of that belief, creating those excuses and driving your behavior, it's really important to pull those out. Then I ask you to look at each one of those and write a new story. So, you know, if you think that healthy eating is too expensive, for example, you might realize that not eating healthy is also expensive. Takeout's not cheap, and driving around to all the fast food restaurants, that takes time. Have you factored in that? Plus any medications that you use for chronic symptoms due to bad diet. Um, Healthy eating is actually far cheaper than poor eating. It just doesn't look like that on a day-to-day basis, but you pay a price in the long term, including bad decisions that you make. You know, if when I get hungry and I have nothing to eat, I feel stressed. And then that leads me to make other hasty and impulsive decisions. There's nothing worse than that hangry feeling, and it often doesn't lead to good results. So I ask you to write a news story, identify each of your beliefs, and to the best that you can, work them. And then finally, after you've done all of that, I ask you to make a new plan for how you're going to prepare your meals. And I want you to cover every concept so that there's no missing link. So we start with, when are you going to the grocery? Where are you getting your recipes? Are you writing this down? Are you going to chop stuff when you get home? Are you going to cook on the weekends? What does all this look like? So really important to have concrete steps and action plans. And then finally, below this video, I've included, again, I think I included it in one of the early videos, and there's another copy in the library as well, but the supplemental support, where I go over the supplements that you can take to boost your brain chemistry, the dopamine, the serotonin, the adrenal fatigue with the cortisol issues, and also taking a multivitamin, taking vitamin D, and taking your omega 3s. And I give you quick and easy links to Amazon to basic supplements. Most supplements are all the same. And as long as you've got a quality company, you can pay $7.99 or $13, and some jackass for sure is going to charge you $45. You have to know what you're looking for, but as long as they're passing the quality tests, then you don't have to spend the big bucks. And I do look at those before I include the link. So I try to make it as easy as possible for you to make nutrition a priority, add supplements in where it works, and then look into the beliefs that need to be challenged so that you can move forward with better behavior. So reach out to me if you have any further nutrition questions. Send me an email, jump on the Facebook group, bring it to a call, because that's what I'm here for. And sometimes things can feel so overwhelming, and then you boil it down and there's just one missing thing there, and you're like, oh, okay, I got this. And you do have it. You're doing well. So I'll see you on the next session.